there's a lingual drain there. It shows that the CNR actually, once upon a time, did pay for drainage. I'm good.
Okay, Mike?
Just as it relates to the drainage piece in CN, there's going to be information sessions at the upcoming Good Roads, in particular on that. And I know both of AMO and Roma have expressed concern and interest as it relates to CN's position that they're no longer paying for drainage assessments. So I think it's a broad implication across all of us with municipal drains. So I think there will be a lot more to come with that. And certainly I think it's important that Perth East continues to support that with other municipalities.
Okay, anyone else with questions? If not, we have a motion that items 5.1.1 to 5.121 is set out on the consent agenda for December 6, 2022. Regular meeting of council be received for information, and the minutes of November 15, 2022 regular council meeting be adopted. Moved by Jerry, second by Jeremy. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we do have two delegations tonight. Our first delegation is Dan Reese, and he's a Shakespeare resident. He wishes to speak on the Shakespeare water system. So, Mr. Reese, if you'd like to come to the table, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for having me and allowing me to express my ideas towards the Shakespeare water system. I've been living in Shakespeare for about 7 years. My family moved there from Wellesley, where I grew up and where we started. My wife and I started our family. Couple of points that I'd like to make for the viability of Site 1, but I'd like to first start off with the original assessment was provided to council on April 7th of 2021, where Site 1 was actually the preferred option, and then 19 months later on October 4th, 2022, the new presentation said that Site 2 was the preferred option. I just have a couple of quotes from the April 7th, 2021 selection of preferred alternative. Says that modifying existing treatment facilities was selected as preferred solution as to address elevated arsenic concentrations in the Shakespeare water supply. A study recommendation to this effect was presented to and supported by staff and council of the Township of Perth East. The alternative 2 was to add additional treatment technologies, which was identified as the preferred solution. Upgrades to existing treatment facilities can be housed within an extension to the existing well house. There are a number of attributes associated with alternative 2, which justified its selection as the preferred option to address the elevated arsenic concentrations present in the Shakespeare water supply. These are, and I've just got 3 highlighted that kind of stand out to me. It can be accommodated within an addition to the existing well house and would require little disturbance to surrounding areas. It requires no significant modifications to existing wells or distribution network, and it is expected to be the most cost-effective of feasible solutions. And that's from the April 7th, 2021 evaluation. You'll all see on the TV there that's a drawing that I've submitted as a possible option for the existing well house. Creating the reservoir underneath the building creates the holding capacity that's needed for flushing the system and allows for the roof line to stay in one straight line. which eliminates the need for having a 20-foot tall addition to the rear of the building, which is obviously not very good curb appeal for the neighbors. I had sent in, following my current, like my correspondence after the meeting, I had sent in with some questions and comments, which I received back information from the engineer for Perth East. And I just had a couple additional comments and questions to those replies. To the issue of the excavation that was brought up, the property is quite narrow, and I can't speak for the neighbors on their behalf because I'm not directly affected. But if they did decide to not go ahead with allowing township to work there, I'm sure they'd have valid reasons. But I would suggest that the most obvious reason for not allowing it would be because the building would have a 20-foot tall addition to the rear of it, which would be, in my opinion, unsightly if I was living directly beside it, which is why I presented this option to council to review and hopefully accept or go forward with. So the engineer also had commented on the backwash demand is greater than the well capacity, which is why there's the need for the reservoir. He pointed out that the supply isn't sufficient enough to handle both the backwash and the supply demand simultaneously. So if that's the case, if it can't already keep up with supply and the backwash, how is the well going to keep up to, and then you build the reservoir for fire support. How can the existing wells keep up to the supply of the system demand? The reservoir is going to flush the system, but the well is also going to have to fill that reservoir as it's being depleted for flushing. So how will the existing well be able to keep up to not only demand, flushing the system and refilling the reservoir, and then also refilling the reservoir that's needed to fight fires? The fire hall already has its own reservoir for filling their tanker trucks. So as far as that goes, that's already covered. Adding the reservoir for fire protection will require many more things that aren't on this 2.85 million list. I'm assuming that that does not include any of the network of piping that's going to be needed to supply the town to fight fires with that water, or the hydrants, or any of the other. It is simply a tank that's holding water. It's not distributing water anywhere in order to fight the fires. It was also mentioned that the new building at Site 2 would only be marginally more than adding to the existing building. And with the addition of the extra reservoir, I guess if the addition to the way I have drawn and 2A, I think, would be kind of the equivalent. I haven't done any commercial construction personally, but I've been doing residential construction my entire working life. And I haven't once seen a project that's twice the size and involvement be marginally more expensive than to do that addition is half the size of the building that would be at Site A. So to say that it would only be $65,000 difference between option 1 and option 2A, personally, I don't see how that is even feasible. The site 2A would be double the building, all the equipment would have to be moved. And so there's many different options or items that would be an argument against that. The cost for the electrical will roughly be the same for both properties to be upgraded, because they're the same distance away from Highway 59, I believe, which was what the previous meeting had said where the Phase 3 power would have to come from. And by building at Site 2, you're creating two separate properties, so now you need maintenance at where the wells are, and you need maintenance and servicing at the where the equipment's being housed. Adding to Site 1 allows all the equipment to be housed in one spot, and both wells are on the same location, meaning that there's only one property that needs to be serviced and maintained. And I watched the new presentation for the meeting next week, and at one point during the presentation, it says that the excavation can't be done at the existing site, which is not true, because if the township receives approval from the neighbors, there can be excavation done. The materials that would be needed to be hauled away because the site's not big enough can be put at the road allowance site on Lindner Court, where the road allowances where North Hill Drive would continue through. There's an empty lot right there that the material could be dropped off there, short trucking. And it would likely need to be used also if Site 2 was developed, because although that property is larger, the building isn't, to do the work, to build the building, the material can't stay there, so it's gonna have to be trucked away also. In closing, I feel the option that I've presented here with the addition is very feasible. I think it should be added to the presentation. That's gonna be brought to the public next week, so that people can see that there is an option available that doesn't have the high roof line. My option also does the same thing as option 2A, without having to run water lines from the well site. The wells are already on that property, where 2A would require running piping from the wells to the new location. The existing wall to the north with the electrical equipment that's coming up the back of the building, of the existing building, can easily be renovated around that. You leave that section of that wall there, and the addition gets added on. That building would be basically split into two separate rooms. And none, as I pointed out, none of the existing neighbors are going to accept that drawing that was proposed for that 20-foot high addition to the back of the building. I know personally, if I lived there, I would say no automatically to that. But if there's an option presented such as this, where the building is basically keeping its same shape and size, it's just a little bit longer, I think is a lot more acceptable to the neighbors to hopefully agree with. And finally, if you were to ask yourselves, and you lived in this area of Shakespeare, or had family or close friends living in that subdivision, would you be more concerned about future opportunities, or would you focus on the more present issue and address the fact that there's not clean water and there's arsenic in the water that those people are drinking. That's it.
Okay, thank you. I know you had a couple questions. Mr. Burns, can you help us out to answer the questions that Mr. Reese had? You just want to move up to the table as well with your books?
I'm not sure I got them all, so if I missed something, let me know. I want to start off by talking about what Mr. Reese mentioned about in April 2021, we believe that we could put treatment at the existing site. And then by really by the fall of that year, we were fairly confident that it was going to be extremely difficult. And what happened in the interim there was that we worked with the township and proceeded to select the equipment that would actually be used for treatment, and determined that the equipment that would work best is filter systems that require backwash. And if you have backwash, you need backwash storage. And all we had felt was feasible at that location was storage in a tank. And I'll explain more about that later. But it was really in the first environmental assessment, which really was a high-level investigation of other things. It was looking at the possibility of drilling another well at another location. It looked at the possibility of modifying the existing wells in some way to limit the amount of arsenic that will get into the water supply. And neither of those was feasible. So the logical thing to do then was to treat the water. And the initial work that we had done, we felt that filtration equipment could fit in an extension to the pump house. But when it became apparent that we needed very significant quantities of treated water for backwash, it no longer was feasible. So that's what happened, and that triggered the need to, it triggered a reason to look at other locations rather than the existing site. So that's the one point. Now, with respect to what's proposed here, we welcome ideas, we welcome questions. We do far too many projects where nobody questions anything at all, and so this is good. The challenge with building this on the existing site is doing the excavation. The site is only 5.5 meters wide, which would be, not much more than the distance here. This would require an excavation somewhere in the order of 2.5 meters. And you can only legally construct an excavation with a vertical wall up to 1.2 meters, 4 feet. And then you must slope back at a 1-to-1 slope. And that is under ideal soil conditions. If the soils are not stable, then you do go 1-to-1 from the bottom. But even assuming we can go 1-to-1 or, vertical for 4 feet and then slope the rest, we are on to the neighboring properties, both sides. And access would really have to be from the property to the north. So in order to construct this, which is a good arrangement. We need the agreement of all three property owners. And the township has, to my understanding, has been in contact or attempted to make contact. And at this point in time, we don't have any response from two of the neighbors. And we have a response, my understanding, as of today, a response from one neighbor that he is not supporting, would be supportive of us doing work on the existing site. So we can still work with that, but this would be, can only be done with a significant impact to the adjacent neighbors for access reasons and the excavation. There were some other alternatives suggested. One was really questioning why we need storage for backwash. Could we use a second well? And the second well, although there's two wells on the site, they draw water from the same location. They don't, the aquifer has a limited supply equal to the capacity of one of the wells. So we cannot operate both wells simultaneously. And if we were to try, even for a short period of time, we know from experience that we create turbidity and disrupt the wells. So the wells are very sensitive to overpumping. We also, in sort of a similar idea, could we use just one well, but do it in the middle of the night? The example was like an iron filter you'd have with your household system. And it's a good question, but the amount of water that we need for backwash, the rate that we need to pump is slightly greater than the well capacity. And even if the two were matched, we can't be pumping all the water through the filter and supplying the system at the same time. If even in the middle of the night, if the well was backwashing the filter and somebody flushed a toilet somewhere, you would depressurize the water system. So that's not feasible. And then related to that is we can't backwash with water that is not treated. We have equipment that is worth $500,000. It's trying to take out particles that are 1 part per billion in size, like extremely small. So backwashing with water with arsenic in it is going to be counterproductive. So those really aren't solutions. We need a tank. And we felt that we can't do the excavation without seriously impacting the neighbors. So we needed a tank inside. And so that's sort of where we are with Site 1. Now, option 2A, we had no drawing for option 2A, and in the presentation there's no drawing. 2A is doing at Site 2 what we would do at Site 1. We would use, again, a plastic or fiberglass tank, but we have the opportunity at Site 2 to put the base of that tank much lower in the ground and really create this kind of a looking building. So Site 2 allows us to do the excavation and provide a better facility than we can do at the existing site. Now, there's questioned how can the cost be similar if the building's twice as big? Well, in 2A, it's not twice as big. It's the same, generally the same size as what we would build at the existing site. It would just allow us to have like a two-level building as opposed to a one-level building, have something that looks better. Even with the agreement of the neighbors, we felt that there's going to be significant costs for access, storing materials, moving the earth off the site back, all those kind of things that are really things that wouldn't have to be done at Site 2. So in Site 2, we can invest more in the building, really for the same result. Now, Site 2 also has opportunities in terms of reservoir construction that would contribute to fire protection, would contribute to what we call redundancy. If the wells are out of service, you can supply from a reservoir. And so there are, again, opportunities at Site 2 that would never exist at Site 1. Now, the opportunities have a cost, and it's really like in every situation, the more you pay, the more you get. But option 2A is not, did not have a reservoir at Site 2. It was really doing something similar to this, only with a storage tank in a lower level. But the other ones, all 2B, 2C, 2D, all have a reservoir. And that, depending on how the reservoir is equipped and sized, you get increasing benefit. So that was, I think that's why it isn't the same cost for twice as much building. It's not twice as much building. It's the same as that. The costs, it's correct that the costs that we presented do not include water mains in the community that don't exist already. So if there was to be more water mains in the community, that's an extra cost. It's not part of the proposal. To take full advantage of fire protection throughout the community, you would need hydrants, and they're not in the cost estimate either, but they can be added at any point in time. We can add hydrants to the existing water mains, and providing there's a fire pump and a reservoir, we can pump to those hydrants on the existing mains and get hydrant protection through a greater part of the community than is protected in any way now. So I think, I'm not sure if that's everything. It might be good to see if there's any questions.
Okay, do we have any questions from members of council? Hugh?
When you're talking about the water and the backwash and stuff like that, so once you've backwashed, do you not put that water into the sewer?
That's correct. That's what we would do. Into the sanitary sewer.
So the sewer would be able to take that, because I'm assuming that you're talking about a fairly substantial amount of water?
There would be no problem. An 8-inch, the minimum sanitary sewer size in the street is typically 8-inch. And 8-inch sewer at a minimum grade has a capacity of 20 liters per second. We would be backwashing at something in the order of 8 liters per second. So Sewers are plenty big enough.
Oh, okay, but it's just that once it got to where it was being treated, then it could handle the extra flow.
Yeah, the actual volume is, while it's backwashing at a significant rate, like a full rate. But the total period of the backwash is potentially 30 minutes or so. So it won't have a significant volume impact on the wastewater plant. We'll have some, but nothing that can't be handled.
Oh, okay, hey,
Okay, any other questions? Andrew?
Thank you, Mayor Higgins. Thank you, Mr. Reese, for presenting, and thank you, Mr. Burns, for coming to help us out understand the project a little better. It kind of gave me a few extra questions here. So the concern about encroachment to the neighbors is the construction. The final building, if it looked like this, there would be no encroachment. Is that correct or not really?
So if it looked like this?
Yeah, so the encroachment part, you talked about getting the agreement between the neighbors would just be the limited construction phase, correct? Or,
That's correct.
and I don't know if you guys, if BM Ross was involved, this kind of came to me right now, if BM Ross was involved in the second well drilling, how did that work out for construction wise? I know when they drilled my well, it was a big mess for a few days until they figured it out. Was that well received at that time, or some of those rigs? I think it's a 10-inch pipe, if I'm not mistaken.
I personally wasn't involved, so
Oh,
I can't
okay.
say. I know it was. Access was granted from the property to the north
Sure.
to come in and construct the well. And, yeah, well, construction's typically a mess, but, I mean, it was restored.
How big are those well drilling things? I was at work when they did ours. Are they pretty big, or are they, it's not like an auger going through the ice. It must be a pretty good sized machine with pipes and.
It's quite a large
Okay,
machine.
so there was some construction there in the past. And the opportunity reservoir, so that is for fire protection or expansion of a service?
It really would fulfill a dual role. And again, it's a function of how big a reservoir you build. But the logical, if you're going to build a reservoir, the logical minimum size is the same as the foundation for the building, so that you're not building extra walls and so on. So that minimum, if you take that as the minimum size, then it provides water for fire protection, for emergencies, and it provides the opportunity to provide more supply to the system from.
No, thank you. That makes sense. So just to keep it within the arsenic thing, which is the primary reason why we're doing this. So would this be a building like this, wherever it's located, would be substantial or sufficient to do the backwash, to do the filtering for the arsenic, this size of building, or would it have to be bigger? Or like if this is at site 1 or site 2, this building would fit the purpose for just the primary reason of arsenic? Is that a good?
It would.
Okay. No, I appreciate it.
I'm not,
Ish.
yeah, like that. Yeah, it could be done. Like we had envisioned at the existing site, having an addition that was just somewhat larger than the existing pump house footprint. And so if we did it at a different location, it would be, it would be no bigger than the existing pump house plus, a bit more.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else with questions? What does council wish to do? Do we still let him ask any more questions? One question.
Okay, so hypothetically speaking, council and township agreed that they're gonna build a site on site 2 with the reservoir capable of fighting fire and hooked up to all the existing water mains. If there's a fire call and the fire department comes over, hooks onto that hydrant and is depleting that reservoir at however many liters per minute, and it's during the day, everybody's using their services, if the well can't keep up to replenishing the reservoir, how is there gonna be enough water in the well to regenerate everything?
Ah, yeah, and you mentioned that, and I forgot. The difference between a system with a reservoir and one with no storage is that at the present time, the water really goes directly from the wells to the users. So the supply has to meet the peak demand. Peak demand typically comes in the early morning hours, 6 to 8, and again, 5 o'clock till 7 o'clock at night. So you get a couple of peaks in the day. And the water to handle those peaks comes from the well. And so the most you can service is the peak demand that is equal to the well capacity. When you have a reservoir, you can satisfy that peak demand from the reservoir and fill the reservoir at night. Like you can pump really 24 hours a day from your wells and fill a reservoir when you're not handling those peak demands, which are typically 4 or 5 hours a day. So that's the way every system with storage works, whether it's an elevated tank or a reservoir. They typically deplete in the daytime and fill up at night. And it's also how the opportunity for growth comes, because you can, your well supply with the reservoir only has to satisfy the maximum daily demand. The one day of the year where you get the greatest demand, often cause summertime by lawn watering and things like that. But the maximum day demand is generally about 2/3 of what the peak demand is. So if you can fill a reservoir and supply the peaks from the reservoir, your supply can serve more. But that's an opportunity. But that's not why we're proposing it. It's just, again, an opportunity that would derive from building a reservoir.
Okay, thanks, gentlemen. I think we're going to move on here. So normally what we do is we deal with delegations under new business with council's permission. We're going to deal with it right now. So we do have a motion, and the motion is that Council of the Township of Perth East receive the presentation from Dan Reese, Shakespeare resident, Shakespeare Water System for information. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Amanda, second by Jerry. Any more comments or questions? Andrew?
We don't, in our presentation, we don't have a drawing of alternative to it.
That's up to council whether or not someone wants to amend it and council wishes to allow it. So we have an amendment, and your amendment says? Okay, do we have a seconder for that? Hugh? So now we're going to vote on the amendment first. So the amendment is to add this drawing to the BM Ross presentation that will be presented next Tuesday night in Shakespeare on the 13th. Any more questions on that? All those in favor of that? Opposed? Defeated. So then we move back to the original motion, and the original motion is to receive the report for information. All in favor? Carried. Okay, thanks, gentlemen. Our next item under delegations, we welcome Allison Strauss and Anita Natawari, and these ladies are from King Cora School. So ladies, the floor is yours if you want to have a seat, and welcome.
Good evening, Council. My name is Anita Natawari, and this is Allison Strauss. We are members of the fundraising committee from St. Patrick's School in Kincora. Our committee has been raising money to install a new playground at our school, and we are hoping that Council would consider helping us reach our goal. Our project began in January of this year when a group of parents came together to discuss the possibility of replacing our 25-year-old structure. With the support of our school's principal, Diane DeJong, we were granted permission to begin researching playground companies, obtaining quotes, and choosing a design that we believed would best suit our school, our students, and our community. By March, we had committed to Blue Imp, the company who has the longest standing playground manufacturer in Canada and has been family owned and operated since 1917. Our design and project was approved by the school board, and we were finally able to begin the most daunting task yet, fundraising $100,000. We have been very successful since beginning our fundraising campaign and are grateful to the generous Perth East and broader community that has supported our project. Committee members approached both local businesses and the families within our school community. Larger groups such as the Knights of Columbus and Kincora, Tradition Mutual, Huron Tractor, and Quadro are just a few who made larger donations to our project. By the time school finished in June, we had raised over $40,000. When the school year started in September, our committee went right back to work, planning events and fundraisers. In October, the Optimist Club of Ellis hosted a drive-through pork chop dinner. We sold 500 tickets and were thrilled to have the support of Mayor Rhonda Egetts, Councillor Amanda Bradhagen, and MP John Nader, and MPP Matthew Ray. It was an incredible amount of work, but that event raised $10,000. With the continued support from our community, we have now raised over $82,000. We are so close to our goal of having a new playground installed in the spring of 2023. While St. Patrick's not only serves our school families, it serves a much larger community within Perth East. The Kincora Athletics Association, which operates a soccer season from May to August, had almost 200 players registered within their organization. The playground is used both before and after games by players, siblings, and children from visiting centers. The playground is used year-round, with hundreds of children benefiting from a new and improved structure that will better serve their needs. The playground we selected and designed with Blue Imp has much-needed improvements regarding accessibility and inclusivity for students and those who want to play. There is an accessible swing for youth with mobility issues, improved surfacing, as well as ramps to better accommodate those with varying physical abilities. There is a bench with a canopy for those students who wish to be included and socialized but may not feel comfortable playing on the play structure, as well as there's a tractor car that promotes group play. We have included in our application package additional information from Blue Imp that provides greater detail regarding their warranty and initiative to be environmentally friendly. Children learn best through play. We want to give the students at our school and the youth in our Perth East community a place where they can gather, laugh, and run around together. We are asking together for a $10,000 contribution, which will put us closer to reaching our final goal. Thank you so much for considering our request, and we are happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, questions from council? Amanda?
Thank you so much, ladies, and it was great to be at the Pork Chop Barbecue event, and appreciate your presentation and hear your request. I know that I think I've seen on Facebook there is a bunch of other fundraisers happening as well. There's like a cheese fundraiser with the kids. maybe if you can speak to, some of the other little fundraising things that you guys are currently doing, because I know you guys are so close to reaching your goal. And when do you need to have your goal reached? Is it by the end of the year to order the playground? What's the timeline for that?
So Blue Imp had told us originally that we had until the end of the year to hold our 2022 pricing. And they had sort of moved that date up to the beginning of December, which was still doable. So the school board issued a check to pay for the playground in full, which would hold our 2022 pricing. And at that point, they had said as we had paid for it, they would hold it in storage so that we could then install in the spring or summer. Our goal is spring, sooner the better. We have a fundraiser with Stonetown Cheese out of St. Mary's. And we've got our final numbers in for that Friday, I believe. And that fundraiser raised $900. And the Knights of Columbus in Concora are hosting a St. Patrick's Day dance in March. And that also will go towards the playground as well. And other than that, we have been sort of trying to approach more businesses and see if we can get more of those donations. Because we don't want to bleed out our families and our community by continually asking for money. So that's where we're at this point. So very close.
Okay, Jerry?
Yeah, excellent. We need recreation in our communities for sure. And we've built a number of these in the last few years around the township, and for sure Concora is well in need of one. Your letter mentioned some grants, and you have mentioned some insurance companies. Just can you give us a quick rundown of what grants you've got received? And because there's lots of them out there, right? You just obviously you got to work toward to get them, but which grants have you received and are you still looking for?
So we have received the Bayer grant, which was for $2,500, which was a random draw, which we were lucky to receive. We had applied for the Hensel Co-op grant, which we did not receive, and we did not receive the FGC grant. So those were the three that we had applied to, and then we had other grants that we considered, but based on their previous awarding history, we did not think that we were going to qualify. Not a lot of schools seem to be winning those grants, so we stuck with the two that were close to home, and we're just unfortunate not to be selected.
Okay, any other questions? So with your permission, we're going to deal with this now as well instead of under new business. So we do have a motion. Okay, so does anyone wish to, Amanda?
I'd like to make a motion that council supports the request of $10,000. There is a precedent, so I think the 10,000 is very specific. In 2019, we supported Central Perth School, and we've done it also here in town in Milverton over the years. So there is a precedent for that dollar amount, and I think they've really demonstrated that they've brought the community together and looked at a number of sources, and so they're so close to reaching their goal, and it would be great to be able to be part of that. So I like to make that motion.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Andrew? So you want that money to go right away, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Just so I'm clear. I was sure that's what you wanted, but.
Paula, do you need to know what account that's coming out of then?
Yes, that was going to be my next question. Where is it going to be funded from? Parkland Reserve?
Suggestions, like the park?
Parkland Reserve?
Parkland Reserve, I think that's where the other ones came from.
Yeah, one came from that, and the previous two came from corporate reserves. So I would suggest the Parkland Reserve, because that's more appropriate for the playgrounds.
Okay, so you want to add that to your motion? And are you good with
Yes.
that, Andrew? Okay. So the motion is that Council of the Township of Perth East receives a presentation from Allison Strauss and Anita Natawari, fundraising committee at St. Patrick's School, Kinkora, playground donation request for information, and that a grant of $10,000 be given from the Parkland Reserve. Okay, Jerry?
Give us a quick balance, all of that reserve.
Bob?
Just while Paul is looking that up, is it a policy of the township to take public funds to give outside of the township? I just think it's rather peculiar to have no control over what you're giving away.
I don't believe we have a policy. I guess what Amanda said, we kind of set a precedent, and we started in Shakespeare a few years ago, and we gave Shakespeare some money. They were putting in playground equipment, and it also benefited our community center. And so once we did that, then we had Milverton Public come to us, and once again, it benefits community because the kids play on that playground. Then we had Central Perth come. There's no playground in Wartburg. Those kids go down to that school. So I think that's kind of how we've been looking at it. You're right, we probably should have a policy in place, but we don't. But we have done it in the past that we have donated, and Kinkora is the same way. There's no park in Kinkora, and I think all the kids in the village go and play at the school. Amanda?
Just offering a comment, and I think we had this discussion, Bob, with Sebringville. So we don't own the land in Sebringville, and the Sebringville Athletic Association came to us looking for funding. And it is a community that we don't own land there. So it was a way that we could partner with a local community group to to show that, look, we have taxpayers there too. And so I think in some of our wards, we are fortunate to own some of those lands, and it makes some of those investments and grant opportunities when we're seeking provincial and federal dollars a lot easier. But some of our other little hamlet communities, we don't have that. And so Kinkora is a very vibrant, a lot of young people. And so I think it's just a great opportunity to partner with some of our volunteers in our communities and show that tax dollars across the township, doesn't matter whether we own those lands or not, that the township is there to support them.
Okay, Paula?
The current balance in the Parkland Reserve is 150,000.
Okay, thank you. Andrew?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to clarify Councillor McMillan's comment. This is in Perth East, correct?
Correct,
Oh,
yes.
okay. It almost sounded like it wasn't in Perth East. Thank you.
No, Kinkora is just west of Wartburg. Yeah. No, it isn't. It isn't Perth East. Okay, any other questions? If not, all in favor? Carried. Thanks, ladies. Okay, now we're going to move to our public meeting. So I declare this public meeting to be open. This public meeting is being held to consider a proposed zoning bylaw amendment affecting property currently owned by Keith Townsend Limited, Ross Townsend Limited, and Townsend Ag Limited. Legal address of Concession 3, West Part Lot 22, East Part Lot 23, Northeast Hope Ward, 2280, line 37. This meeting is an opportunity for the township to advise the public of the purpose and intent of the amendment and to receive their input prior to considering adoption of an implementing bylaw. If a bylaw is adopted to implement the zoning amendment, a notice of passing will be forwarded by prepaid first-class mail to various agencies of interest and others who have requested notice. An appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal objecting to the adoption of the bylaw may be filed with the clerk not later than the date stated on the notice. Any person attending this meeting who wishes to receive written notice of a bylaw passed to implement the amendment is asked to give their name and mailing address to the clerk following this meeting. No written notice except as previously noted will be given unless requested by email following the meeting. All persons attending this meeting will be given an opportunity to be heard or make a presentation. I will now call on Planner Pooney to present the planning report and recommendations. And Pooney's coming in on the screen. Pooney, are you there?
Yes, hello.
Welcome. And the
Thank
floor is
you.
yours.
Good evening, Mayor Eggets and council members. Tonight I'm presenting to you the zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by Townsend Ag Limited, Ross Townsend Limited, Keith Townsend Limited. Sorry, I just got my feedback for a second. The next step, please. Thank you. So the site is located on 2280 line 37 within the township of Perth East. It is on the west side of Perth Road 107 and north of line 37 with an entrance from line 37. This application for rezoning is required as a condition of consent for the file B30-22, which has received conditional approval to sever a dwelling that is surplus to a farming operation. The consent application was endorsed by Perth East Council on September 8, 2022, and approved on September 26th by the County of Perth Manager of Planning. The subject line has an area of approximately 41 hectares. The proposed several lot would have 51.4 meters of frontage approximately on line 37 and a lot area of 4,146 square meters. The lot shape will be rectangular. The proposed several lot would contain the existing single detached dwelling, accessory storage building, driveway, and water and septic services. The existing agricultural livestock and the accessory structures on the retained lot will be demolished. The proposed retained farm lot will have approximately 400 meters of frontage on line 37 and a lot area of 40.6 hectares, and it's crop agricultural land. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment applies to both the severed land, which is the residential parcel, and the retained land, which is the farm parcel. The proposed severed lot will be rezoned to the A-1, which is agricultural special zone. The site-specific zone applies to new lots created through the surplus farm dwelling severance process. The A-1 zone will ensure that the lot containing the surplus farm dwelling will only be used for non-farm residential purposes, while also including applicable zoning bylaw provisions for accessory structures and uses. And the retained farm lot will be rezoned from agricultural zone A to agricultural special zone A-5, and which that one prohibits any new permanent residential dwelling on that lot. And the last slide, please. Thank you. The property is designated agricultural and natural resource environment in the Perth County official plan. The proposed separate lot complies with the minimum lot area and frontage requirements of the zoning bylaw. And there are no site alterations or development proposed on this lot. As for the public comments, the notice of public meeting was mailed to landowners on November 11th. We received one correspondence from the UTRCA stating they have no objection to the zoning bylaw amendment application. With this, I would like to end my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone present who wishes to make a presentation or speak in opposition of the application and a request that they give their name and address for the record when they are recognized? Anyone opposed? Is there anyone present who wishes to make a presentation or speak in support of the application other than the applicant or the applicant's agent and a request that they give their name and address for the record when they are recognized? Does the applicant or the applicant's agent have any comments in respect to the application and draft zoning bylaw or the comments that have been made? Gentlemen? Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from members of council? Jerry?
Not a question, just to point clarity. So we've seen tons of these over the years. So this house is going to be severed and someone can live in there. If in 20 years this house, it looks like it's an older dwelling. If in 20 years this house is going to be rot, we cannot, the proponent cannot tear it down and build a new house. Is that correct? the way that statement reads, rezone the retained farm lot to prohibit any new permanent residential dwelling.
So the permanent residential dwelling will be prohibited on the farmland, on the retained lot, which will have no structures on it. So it's just the farming operation, really.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else with questions, Hugh?
Not necessarily a question, but I realize we're creating a new lot on farmland, but there is an existing building there, so paying $550 to the Conservation Authority seems like an unbelievable waste to me. And Shakespeare provincially significant wetland is not even close to it, so just a comment.
Okay. Anyone else? Council will consider a resolution regarding the plan and report recommendation following conclusion of the public meeting. Bylaw number 208-2022 to implement the approval of the zoning application will be considered later within the council agenda. The public meeting is now concluded and will continue with regular meeting of council. So we do have a motion, and the motion is the Council of the Township of Perth East received a report dated December 6, 2022, prepared by the planner entitled Zoning Bylaw Amendment Number D14-Z08-2022-PE, submitted by Townsend Ag Limited, Ross W. Townsend Limited, Keith Townsend Limited, affecting lands described as Concession 3, West Part Lot 22, East Part Lot 23, Northeast Hope Ward, Township of Perth East, 2280, line 37 for information, and that council held a statutory public meeting pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment D14-Z08-2022-PE, and that council approved zoning bylaw amendment 208-2022. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Hugh, second by Jeremy. Any more comments or questions? All in favor? Carried. Okay, we will now move, we do not have any public hearings, so the next item is under planning. We have a part lot control exemption for Rob Esposito. Melissa, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So this application is part lot control exemption, PLCOA 2022 by Rob Esposito. Next slide, please. The owner of the property at 3995 James Street is requesting that lot 172, plan 334, be exempt from part lot control so that it can be split into two lots essentially along the demising wall of the semi-detached dwelling. The overall lot area is 22.76 meters square to be precise. The purpose of part lot control exemption is to further divide subdivision land into smaller parcels so that like in this instance, when creating a part of the lot for a portion of the semi-detached dwelling. As per the county official plan, the proposed semi-detached dwelling is a permitted use. Each semi-detached dwelling will have its own connections for water and sanitary services. In terms of zoning, the land is zoned residential R2, and the zone permits one single detached dwelling, a semi, one duplex dwelling, one triplex, converted dwellings, group homes, home occupations, bed and breakfast establishment, accessory uses. I have provided an explanation in my report with regards to the split zoning of the land. So it has dual zoning, both C1 along the northerly edge, but the vast majority of the site is actually zoned R2. So the explanation for the interpretation is provided in the report. The maximum lot area and lot frontage for each unit of a semi-detached dwelling in the R2 zone, so the areas are 325 meters squared and 9 meters respectively. So both parts, part 1 and part 2, conform with the requirements. So each part is just over 600 square meters, 6 to be precise, whereas the requirement is 325. and the frontages are just over 10 meters, whereas the requirement is 9 meters for each side of the semi. The side yard setback has been reduced to 2.05 meters from the required 2.4 meters, and this minor variance approval was obtained back in April, on April 19th of this year. And the remaining provisions, so the building will comply with all the remaining provisions, setbacks, height, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. So they actually surveyed the foundation, so the foundation is above grade. So there's an attached bylaw, and I guess it'll be heard towards the end of the meeting tonight. So the bylaw, if approved, will be in effect for 1 year, after which time Section 55 would be reinstated. We are recommending that Perth East Council adopt the bylaw to exempt Lot 172 of Plan 334 from part lot control for the purposes of dividing the lot, and to forward the bylaw to Perth County for approval. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. Any questions of the report? Seeing no questions, we have a motion that the Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report dated December 6, 2022, prepared by the planner, entitled Part Lot Control Exemption PLC-08-2022-PE, submitted by Rob Esposito, affecting lands described as Plan 334, Lot 172, Southeast Hope Ward, Township of Perth East, 3995 James Street, Shakespeare, for information, and that council adopt bylaw number 62-2022 and forward to the County of Perth for approval. We need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Andrew, second by Jerry. Any more comments or questions? All in favor? Carried. And the next item is a zoning bylaw amendment, removal of hold for Noon Industries. Melissa?
Thank you again. So the subject property is one property over from the northeast corner of line 34 and Perth Road 135 in Sebringville, Ellis Ward, Township of Perth East, of course. Next slide, please. The owner is proposing a new building on the site to expand their current operations, which is on the other side of Road 135. The proposed use is described as farm-related industrial and commercial use for the manufacturing of farm equipment and distribution of farm-related products and accessory uses. The new building on the east side of Road 135 is proposed to be 10,265 square meters in size, with an access point off of Road 135. The site will additionally have 69 parking spaces and a stormwater containment area. The subject land is zoned ACM, or Agricultural Commercial Industrial Zone, with site-specific zoning in place, ACM 30. The site-specific zoning was applied to the property on June 19th, 2019, to permit a new building for Noon Industries, but also to establish site-specific buffering to Black Creek and to the neighboring residential properties to the east. In addition, they obtained a minor variance approval on September 8th, 2022, to reduce the northerly setback from the original 75 meters down to 40 meters. So this is not too long ago, and I'm not sure if council members recall this application. As for the site-specific provisions that were applied back in 2019, in order to remove the H provision, the owner is required to provide a feasibility analysis, or so-called D6 compatibility analysis, which details use-specific evaluation of the industrial processes and the potential for off-site impacts on existing and proposed sensitive land uses, and interest into a site plan agreement with the township. The application for site plan approval for proposed new industrial building is currently in circulation, and the intent is to issue the site plan in the very near future. Second slide, please. So this is the proposal that, as it stands right now, the hold 5 provision, which is currently in place, that's the site-specific provision in addition to the ACM 30. was placed on the lands to ensure that the proposed development is compatible with the adjoining residential use. In order to study the compatibility with the adjoining land and satisfy the conditions of H removal, the owner retained a consultant to prepare the required D6 compatibility study. The study found the following. Negative impacts from dust and odor are not anticipated, as the on-site roadways are to be concrete or asphalt. And I just have to point out the fact that originally when they came in, they were proposing gravel. So now it's concrete or asphalt all throughout the site. Noise impacts at the nearest point of reception are likely to be within the acceptable limits, and noise mitigation is not required at this time. And the owner will be required to obtain environmental compliance approval or an environmental activity and sector registration prior to the engagement in any activities that have the potential to emit contaminants, including noise. So these are the findings of the study. Planning is satisfied that the analysis has been successfully completed and recommend the approval of this application and the lifting of the H provision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the report? We do have a motion that the Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report dated December 6, 2022, prepared by the planner entitled Zoning Bylaw Amendment Removal of Hold H5, submitted by Caroline Baker on behalf of Noon Industries, affecting lands described as RCP 511, Part Lot 87, RP 44R, 5662, Part 1, Ellis Ward, Township of Perth East, 4017 Perth County Road 135, Sebronville, for information, and that council approve zoning bylaw amendment number 213-2022 as the conditions for removal have been met. A mover and a seconder, moved by Amanda, second by Hugh. Any more comments or questions? All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Melissa. We'll now move to the CAO, and we have the Shakespeare Water Environmental Assessment. Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess, yeah, the report, I think, is pretty straightforward and really just an information package for council to try and kind of recap, I guess, some of the history as it relates to the Shakespeare Water EA. And I recognize that I may not have captured everything, but it was not my intent to miss anything. But certainly if there are items that are missing, I'm happy to try to update and reflect them in the report. But it was, yeah, really just kind of a summary piece leading up to our public information session that's scheduled for December 13th, so that, yeah, all the resources or reference material was easily at hand for council. So I'll try to answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, questions of the report? Andrew?
No, first of all, CO, given that's quite a bit of information. It's from my perspective, there are a few gaps, but I think all the big stuff is in there. I appreciate the effort for sure. So there's one that may be significant that's discussed in the report, and it is March 6th meeting, agenda item 8.51, which was a BM Ross report to the township to council. This was presentation report at the community hall. So it's the council presentation. I think we've captured the public presentation. If the council might want to add that to the reading list.
So is that this year? March 6th?
Oh, no,
What year?
2018.
2018, okay.
Yeah,
that
it
helps.
kind of fills in. There's a few dissimilarities, and I only mention it because in the BM Ross trailer on the for their thing, it mentions misinformation, and I've heard that word a couple of times before. Confusion, I think, it was, and there's items in there, especially near the end, which may may be valuable to see why there may be some gaps in why people have questions about what's the intent of the exercise is. So I would say look at the summaries in that report, but the whole report is good. It's the council presentation. There's an extra 10 pages in it, 10 or 15 pages that aren't in the one that's listed in the CAO report. So thought that might be helpful.
March what day?
I believe it's March 6, 2018. Item our agenda item 8.5.1. It's just the council version of the report that went to the public meeting. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else with questions? If not, we do have a motion that the council of the Township of Perth East receive the report entitled Shakespeare Water EA Backgrounder dated December 6, 2022, prepared by the Chief Administrative Officer for information. Mover and a seconder, moved by Amanda, second by Jerry. Any more comments or questions? All in favor? Carried. Okay, now we're going to move to the clerk. And the first one is petition for drainage work, and Eric is going to present. So Eric, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. So tonight, just presenting a petition for a Section 4 under the Drainage Act, which is a petition for a new municipal drain. We received this petition on November 1st, 2022 from Josh Gerber, and he would like a tile drain to be constructed from southerly on Road 126, and that will be an extension of the Quip municipal drain. So in accordance with the Drainage Act, we are hoping to appoint Dietrich Engineering to prepare a report under Section 4, and that we provide notice to the Conservation Authority that has jurisdiction over the lands.
Okay, any questions for Eric? If not, we have a motion that the Council of the Township of Perth East receive the petition for drainage works, Section 4 of the Drainage Act, by property owner Josh Gerber for Part Lot 10, Concession 15, Ellis Ward, Township of Perth East, for information, and that council appoint Dietrich Engineering Limited to prepare a report under Section 4 of the Drainage Act, and that staff proceed to provide notice of the proposed drainage works to the Secretary-Treasurer of the Conservation Authority that has jurisdiction over the lands in the affected area. We need a mover and a seconder, moved by Hugh, second by Bob. Any more questions, comments, or questions? Jerry? No. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Eric. Okay, and then we're the next is the land rental extension agreement. Ashley?
Okay, thanks, Mayor Rigetts. So this is just a one-year extension agreement for the land. This is just outside of Stratford, kind of behind Canadian Tire there. People are familiar with this. We've rented this land out for several years. I'm only proposing a one-year renewal because we haven't had it go out for RFP since 2012. And just giving the timeline of when I returned back to work, there wasn't quite enough time to get all of that done and get the extension done that expired at the end of the year. So next year I'd be looking to RFP this land and align that with the other land rental that we have, like the Lagoon Farms. So that's just why it's 1 year. And I can answer any questions if anyone has any.
Okay, questions? No questions? Then we have a motion. The Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report prepared by the clerk dated December 6, 2022, entitled Land Rental Extension Agreement for 28 acres, Part Lot 41, Concession 1, Southeast Hope, for information, and that council give 3 readings to Bylaw 63-2022, being a bylaw to extend the rental agreement with Derek Vanderspeck for 28 acres of property located at Part Lot 41, Concession 1, Southeast Hope, for 1 year from January 1, 2023 to December 31st, 2023, and that 3 readings be given to Bylaw 63-2022, authorizing the mayor and the clerk to sign the 1-year rental agreement. Moved by Hugh, second by Amanda. Any more comments or questions? All in favor? Carried. Okay, we'll move to finance, and the first item in that is our annual borrowing bylaw. Paula, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Rigetts. So council has before them the annual borrowing bylaw for 2023 that allows for a $1.9 million line of credit, and that's mainly used for the cash flow purposes with the timings of the tax levy payments. And just council should note that typically these lines of credits are not used, and if they are used, it's for a short duration. And the last item I wanted to note was the bylaw that was included in the package had a date error in section 1. It referred to 2022, and that has been updated for tonight to 2023. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, questions of the report? Okay, that the Council of the Township of Perth East received a report prepared by the treasurer dated December 6, 2022, entitled Annual Borrowing Bylaw for Information, and that 3 readings be given to bylaw number 64-2022, being a bylaw authorizing the borrowing of money to meet 2023 current expenditures. Moved by Andrew, second by Jerry. Any more comments or questions? All in favor? Carried. And next, the 2023 interim tax levy bylaw.
Okay, thank you. The 2023 tax interim bylaws before council tonight, and that is to allow for us to levy the interim taxes, which is 50% of the 2022 taxes that were levied on a property. And that establishes the 2 interim installment dates, being February 24th of 2023 and May 26th of 2023. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, any questions for Paula? No? Okay, council received, excuse me, that the Council of the Township of Perth East received the report prepared by the treasurer dated December 6, 2022, entitled 2023 Interim Tax Levy Bylaw for Information, and that council approved bylaw number 65-2022, being a bylaw to provide for interim tax levies for 2023. Moved by Amanda, second by Hugh. Any more comments or questions? All in favor? Carried. And the next is our annual investment report. Paula?
So the annual investment report for 2022 is included in the package tonight. And our investments to date at the end of November totaled $19.5 million. Then that was made up of $10.1 million in principal protected notes. The rest were made up of GICs and high interest savings accounts. The interest rates ranged from 1.45% to 4.85%. So they're increasing as we're renewing, so that is good to see. And the summary was included on the breakdown of the investments within the report. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, are there any questions of the report? We have a motion that the Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report prepared by the treasurer dated December 6, 2022, entitled Annual Investment Report for Information. Moved by Bob, second by Amanda. Any more comments or questions? All in favor? Carried. And the last one, asset retirement obligations. Paula?
Okay, so I have a draft asset retirement obligation policy before council tonight. And this is a new public sector standard 3280, which is coming into effect on financial statements ending for 2023. So we needed to have a policy in place before the end of the year 2022 with a plan of how we were going to evaluate and recognize and report on these asset retirement obligations within our financial statements. An asset retirement obligation arises when there's a legal obligation associated with the retirement of a tangible capital asset. So the main items that will probably affect Perth East without going through the full inventory of assets are maybe some asbestos in buildings. We have underground fuel tanks possibly. There's the ammonia in the ice rinks, as well as gravel pits. The landfill sites are already currently assessed under public sector guideline of 3270, which will be moved. They're moving the landfills to this 3280. So they'll be combined in. They won't be a separate thing on the financial statements under 3270. And the other items would be, we'd have to look at any lease agreements that we have, if there's any requirements for us to return to the original condition of any leased properties. And then septic tanks, septic beds, we have to look at those. These items need to be assessed for any retirement obligations, costs that may be incurred if we're to no longer use these assets and retire them. And that amount has to be reassessed annually and updated within the financial statements. So it's going to be quite a bit of work for the finance team, as well as the various departments. because we'll be relying on their expertise of their assets. And we will begin this work in 2023, and it'll be identifying and assessing and estimating these asset retirement obligations. There may be some consultants that need to be pulled in for their professional opinion on the retirement valuations. And the citywide software that the township uses to track their assets now has the capability of tracking our asset retirement obligations. So once this initial analysis is done, it will simplify things and make things easier to track. It's just getting through this initial evaluation and inventory of our obligations. The financial impact to the 2023 financial statements isn't known at this time until we assess all of the assets and put a price to those retirement obligations. So once we have that done, a report will come to council so they're aware of the investment on that or the changes on that. And I just wanted to note that these adjustments are considered accounting adjustments, so they're not cash outlays. It's just paper recognition right now until that asset is retired, and then that cash would be outlaid. So one thing we'll want to consider too going forward is possibly establishing an asset retirement obligation reserve for these costs in the future. So that concludes my report. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Okay, any questions for Paula? Amanda?
You had mentioned about, in terms of looking to the future, about creating a reserve. When would you recommend that we proceed with that?
That's a good question. I would recommend getting the assessment of the retirement obligations to date, so we have an amount that we know we're looking at, and then we'd break it down so that we can collect those for the end of the asset life, so that we have that money set aside when we retire them, when it's needed.
So forgive me,
Oh,
what would
sorry.
the timeline be like?
So
Typically?
we'd be looking at that in probably the end of 2023 to set up in 2024. Sorry.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, we have a motion that the Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report prepared by the Treasurer dated December 6, 2022, entitled Asset Retirement Obligation ARO Policy for Information, and that policy number FI-1.24.01 Asset Retirement Obligations is approved, and that staff are authorized to establish a new Asset Retirement Obligation Reserve Fund for future use. Moved by Amanda, second by Hugh. Any more comments or questions? All in favor? Carried. Next, Paula. So we have no reports from Public Works, no reports from Building, no reports from Recreation and Community Services. We're going to Fire then. Pre-budget approval for apparatus bay doors in Shakespeare. Bill, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Mayor. The report before council tonight is a request for pre-budget approval to expedite a capital repair to the Shakespeare Fire Station. The apparatus bay doors were scheduled to be part of the 2023 capital budget request. However, recent failure has increased our urgency to get this work completed. If there's any questions with the report, I'll gladly try and answer.
Okay, questions for Bill? Seeing no questions, we have a motion. The Council of the Township of Perth East received a report entitled Pre-Budget Approval Apparatus Bay Doors Shakespeare, dated December 6, 2022, prepared by the Fire Chief for information, and that Council authorized the replacement of the Shakespeare apparatus doors immediately with the cost of the project not to exceed $23,500 plus applicable HST to be funded from the Building Betterment Reserve. Moved by Jeremy, second by Andrew. Any more comments or questions? Sorry, Jeremy.
So there's an urgency behind this. Do we not have a policy in place where, like, the CAO can approve up to a certain amount, pre-budget approval like this? instead of waiting around for council to deal with it? Like, I thought for some reason we had a $50,000 number that the CAO could approve. I could be wrong, but.
There, through you, Mayor, I guess, there are provisions within the procurement policy. A lot of times they refer to the procurement process, meaning in an emergency situation, we could bypass the process, which the fire chief has already kind of addressed. But you're right, there are spending limits associated with that. Part of the challenge at this time of year, we're right before budget, and we wanted to make sure council was aware of where the dollars were coming from, but there are provisions. In this instance, because there aren't dollars laying around in the capital budget, that's the purpose of the report.
Okay,
But, yeah, sorry, just
Yep,
to go
no.
back to that. The definition of emergency in the procurement is pretty, gray. And although it is an urgent situation, it could be debated whether it's an emergency situation.
okay, anyone else? All in favor? I think where I was. Carried, sorry. Okay, now we're going to correspondence. We have one item from Jeremy and the Milverton Lions Club, and they request that the Perk soccer pitch for the New Year's Eve fireworks show be used. Anybody have any comments? Anybody have any objections? No? Okay, well, I'll read this out and see where it goes. Council of the Township of Perth East received the correspondence from Jeremy Matheson, Milverton Lions Club, request to use the Perk soccer pitch for a New Year's Eve fireworks show for information, and that council approve the fireworks show on December 31st, 2022, between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. at the Perk soccer pitch, and the certificate of insurance state that the corporation of the Township of Perth East be added as an additional insured, but only with respects to their interest in the operation of the named insured. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Hugh, second by Andrew. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Carried. There you go, Jeremy. Excitement on New Year's Eve. Okay, now we move to my meeting log where I was in the month of November. Is there any questions what I did? Do we have any council reports? No, okay, then we have a motion that we, that the mayor's meeting log dated November 22nd be received for information. Moved by Hugh, second by Amanda, all in favor? Carried. Okay, the bylaws need to be moved, so with your permission, we'll move them after the closed session. We do have a need for a closed session, so with that, we're going to move it down to below announcements. So we're going to go to notice of motions. Is there any notice of motions? Any new business? Hugh?
I would ask council's indulgence, if we could send a letter to the Perth Museum and request if they are still interested in Broxton. The group that runs it would like to know if there's any interest in moving it anymore, or where they're at, or anything like that.
Okay, so you want that as a motion?
Yes, please.
Okay, so moved by Hugh. Do we have a seconder? Amanda? Any comments, questions? Amanda?
Just a question, do they have like do they have correspondence requesting council? Like, have they given you correspondence to ask for this request specifically?
Yes, it's not written, but I was at their annual meeting. I usually represented the council at their meetings, and at the meeting it was discussed, and they would just wishing a letter to go to them, just simply to ask where they're at.
Thank you.
Okay, so the motion was that we send the museum a letter asking them if they're still interested in Broxton School. Okay, all in favor? Carried. Okay, announcements. There are two parades this weekend. First one being in Milverton on Friday night at 7 o'clock. and it will end up at the Perk, and then there is some games, Becky, at the Perk for everyone to partake in. Okay, and on Saturday is the Shakespeare Parade. It's at 1 o'clock in Shakespeare. And Hugh and I will be in both those parades. If anyone else wants to join us in our vehicle, they're quite welcome to join us. Jeremy? You can. I thought about getting a convertible out, but might be a little chilly. Yeah.
And maybe New Year's Eve fireworks now in Milverton, somewhere between 6 and 8 p.m. on New Year's Eve, put on by the Lions Club.
Okay. And now we need a motion that we'll go into closed session, and then we will have a little break before we do that. Is that correct? Okay. All right. Good. Well, then, thanks everyone for coming tonight. Need a motion to go into close, and it says that the regular meeting of council of the Township of Perth East be temporarily adjourned at 8:50 PM to permit the holding of a meeting in closed session for the purpose of personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, or advice that is subject that advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. So I need a mover and a seconder, moved by Jeremy, second by, Amanda, all in favor? Carried.